I never thought my life would be rewritten by a government envelope. When the letter came in the mail, I assumed it was some kind of recruitment flyer, maybe even a scam. The bold black seal at the top read Federal Renewal Initiative, a program I'd never heard of. Beneath the official lettering, in sharp mechanical print, were the words, "Selected candidate. Mandatory participation required." My heart sank as I read those words over and over again, not fully understanding what they meant. Up until then, I'd been what most people might call a nobody. The kind of guy who lived in the shadows, unnoticed. Quiet in class, overlooked at work, drifting through life as if it belonged to someone else. My friends, if you could call them that, would joke about me being beta, the kind of person who couldn't speak up, couldn't take charge, couldn't even look someone in the eye without second-guessing myself. I'd laugh along, but deep down I knew they were right. The letter gave me a time and a place. No explanations, no options. I was to report to a government facility just outside the city within 72 hours. My parents thought it was some kind of draft notice, like I was being called up for service, but I knew the military didn't work like that anymore. This was something different, something strange. When the day arrived, I stood in front of a steel building that had no name, no windows, just a checkpoint guarded by men in dark uniforms. They scanned my ID, checked my letter, and ushered me inside without a word. I wanted to ask questions, but the air around them felt heavy, like silence itself was enforced here. The facility smelled sterile, like bleach and metal. Bright lights hummed overhead, reflecting off the polished white floors. Groups of us, mostly men around my age, all with the same nervous, hunched posture, were herded into a waiting room. None of us spoke. We just stared at each other, as if recognizing the same fear mirrored in every face. Then a woman in a slate gray suit walked in. She was composed, sharp, the kind of person whose gaze could slice through excuses before they were spoken. She introduced herself as Director Holloway and explained the program in a voice that carried both authority and finality. The Renewal Initiative, she said, is a government program designed to address systemic inefficiencies within our society. You have been selected because you have consistently demonstrated traits of passivity, indecision, and weakness. Traits that, frankly, do not serve the nation. Rather than discard potential, the program repurposes it. I remember shifting uncomfortably in my seat, the words stinging. Passivity, weakness. They weren't wrong, but hearing it laid out so bluntly, so officially, made me feel like a specimen under a microscope. Holloway continued, "You will undergo a transformation. Physically, psychologically, socially. The initiative is not optional. You will emerge from this program with a new identity, one carefully engineered for resilience, adaptability, and contribution. In short, you will no longer be who you were." A murmur rippled through the room, people whispering in confusion. One guy raised his hand, voice trembling as he asked what kind of transformation she meant. Holloway's answer was calm, almost casual, as if she were announcing the weather. "You will become women." The words dropped like a stone in the room. Silence followed, thick and suffocating. My pulse hammered in my ears. I thought I'd misheard her, but the expression on her face told me I hadn't. We all sat frozen, as though reality itself had tilted beneath our feet. I wanted to protest, to stand up and shout that this was insane, but my voice caught in my throat. Some part of me, maybe the same part that had always held me back in life, kept me silent. And in that silence, the program began. We were separated into groups and escorted down a long corridor lined with steel doors. Each of us was assigned a room, bare except for a bed, a mirror, and a small desk. It felt less like a dormitory and more like a containment cell. That first night, I stared into the mirror for hours. My reflection looked the same. Awkward, unremarkable, eyes too wide with fear, but the words Holloway had spoken wouldn't leave my head. "You will become women." How? Why? And most terrifying of all, what would I look like when they were finished with me? Sleep never came. Only the gnawing unease of not knowing. The next morning, the real changes began. The morning began with a sharp knock on the door. Before I could answer, it slid open with a mechanical hiss, and 2 orderlies in white coats motioned for me to follow. I hesitated, but their eyes told me there was no choice. My heart thudded as I stepped into the hallway, joining a silent procession of others being led in the same direction. We were guided into what looked like a medical wing, lined with glass rooms where machines hummed and monitors blinked. The air was cold, sterile, and almost metallic, like the smell of iron mixed with antiseptic. Director Holloway stood waiting for us, her hands clasped neatly in front of her, her expression unreadable. "Today marks the beginning of your reformation," she announced. "You will not resist. You will not question. You will adapt. That is the purpose of this program." Her voice carried like a command buried in every syllable. Then she gestured, and each of us was directed into separate chambers. My chamber was lit by harsh overhead lights that cast every flaw of my reflection against the mirrored walls. In the center stood a padded chair surrounded by wires and equipment I couldn't begin to understand. A woman in a lab coat, her badge read Dr. Keene, greeted me with a clinical smile. "Please sit. The procedure is non-invasive, but you may feel disoriented." Her words did nothing to soothe me. My legs felt heavy as I lowered myself into the chair, the leather cold against my skin. Straps were secured across my wrists and ankles before I even realized what was happening. Panic surged through me, but my voice came out small, pleading. "Wait, I don't understand. What are you going to do?" Dr. Keene adjusted a monitor without looking at me. "Phase 1 is neurological conditioning. Your mind must adapt before your body can. Consider it an unlearning of who you were." The words chilled me, but before I could protest further, she pressed a button, and a low hum filled the chamber. Lights flickered, and a warmth spread through the headset they'd placed on my head. Suddenly, images flashed before my eyes. Faces, voices, phrases repeating in endless loops. Confidence comes from within. Vulnerability is strength. Beauty can be armor. You are not bound by who you were. You are becoming who you were meant to be. At first, I fought against it, squeezing my eyes shut, clenching my fists, trying to block out the barrage. But the voice was relentless, wrapping around my thoughts like a net pulling tighter and tighter. Hours, or maybe days, blurred together in that chair. My memories twisted with the new phrases until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. When the headset was finally removed, I was shaking, drenched in sweat. My head felt heavy, but my thoughts were strangely calm, like the words had etched themselves deep into me. I stumbled to the mirror and caught my reflection again. Still me, still the same awkward face, but something in my eyes was different. I almost didn't recognize the expression staring back, like my own reflection was watching me, questioning if I truly knew who I was anymore. The next stage came swiftly. We were given new uniforms, loose white garments that felt more like gowns than clothes. They stripped away the last remnants of our individuality. In the dining hall, I noticed subtle differences already forming in the others. One man's posture seemed softer, his movements more careful. Another kept touching his hair as though expecting it to be longer. Whispers spread at the edges of the room, but no one dared speak openly. Over the following days, the changes began in earnest. Our meals were controlled, every calorie monitored. Nutrient blends replaced most solid food, bitter but oddly sweet at the same time. They said it was necessary for cellular adaptation. I didn't understand, but I drank it because refusing wasn't an option. Soon after, the physical treatment started. They brought us into clinics where machines whirred and needles pricked our skin. At first, it was subtle. My face began to lose its roughness, the faint stubble I used to hate never coming back no matter how many days passed. My skin grew smoother, softer, almost translucent under the bright lights. One morning, I woke and caught sight of my hands, slender, delicate, as if they belonged to someone else. My nails had grown faster, neatly rounded, and my wrists no longer looked angular but slim. Fear and awe battled in my chest as I flexed my fingers, watching how different they moved. But the real shock came when I saw one of the others. Marcus, a tall, broad-shouldered guy who had always seemed unshakable. Within a week, his frame looked narrower, his jawline softer, his voice higher when he spoke. He caught me staring once, and instead of scowling like before, he gave me a small, almost timid smile. It was the first time I realized we were all unraveling thread by thread until the people we'd been no longer existed. At night I couldn't sleep. I'd sit by the mirror, brushing my hand over my changing face, whispering to myself, "This isn't real. This isn't happening." But the reflection disagreed. Each day it showed me someone new, someone I didn't fully know yet. And the scariest part wasn't that I was losing myself, it was that a part of me wondered if maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see who I was becoming. The changes didn't just creep in. They accelerated like a storm you couldn't outrun. Within weeks, our bodies were no longer ours. The nutrient blends thickened, carrying strange aftertastes I couldn't place. Our daily injections left my skin tingling, my muscles aching like they were being reshaped from the inside. I remember the morning I first heard my own voice betray me. I'd been assigned to read aloud a set of phrases in front of Dr. Keene, her pen poised over her clipboard. At first, my voice sounded the same, low, hesitant. But halfway through the sentence, it cracked, higher, softer, almost melodic. I froze, my throat tightening. "Continue," Dr. Keene instructed. I swallowed hard and forced the words out. Each one carried a faint lilt that hadn't been there before. I wanted to scream that this wasn't me, that they'd stolen something fundamental, but all that escaped my lips was a shaky whisper. In the hallways, the others were changing too. Marcus, once towering broad, now walked with narrower shoulders, his face delicate, framed by hair that had grown into neat, soft waves. He avoided mirrors, but I caught him one evening staring at his reflection, fingertips grazing the new curve of his cheek. His expression was hollow, but not entirely horrified. We all reacted differently. Some resisted, fists clenched, eyes blazing with fury every time an injection needle pierced their skin. Others gave in quietly, adjusting to their softer voices, their shrinking frames. As for me, I was caught in between. Half of me clung desperately to who I had been, while another half couldn't help but wonder if the version staring back at me in the mirror was closer to who I was meant to be all along. The emotional strain became unbearable. Arguments broke out in the dorms. One man, James, snapped during dinner, slamming his tray against the wall, shouting that he wouldn't let them erase him. The guards dragged him away, his voice echoing down the hall. None of us saw him again. That night, I lay awake listening to the muffled sobs of those around me. The silence between the cries felt heavier than steel. We were prisoners but not in chains. Our own bodies were the cages being remade. Weeks turned into months. My reflection blurred with each passing day, the masculine edges dissolving until all that remained was something fragile, something undeniably feminine. My cheekbones sharpened, my lips fuller, my eyes wider. My frame slimmed, waist narrowing, hips subtly reshaping. The mirror no longer showed me the awkward, invisible guy I'd been. It showed someone delicate, someone beautiful. That word terrified me. Beautiful. I'd never thought it applied to me, not once in my life. Yet every morning, when I tucked a strand of longer hair behind my ear, when I pressed tentative fingers against my softened skin, I couldn't escape it. The government provided us new clothing as our bodies shifted. Gowns that fit our changing figures, undergarments that reminded us of what we were becoming. The first time I slipped into the new uniform, the fabric clinging differently across my frame, my throat tightened with panic. But beneath that panic, there was another feeling, a strange, unspoken rightness that left me trembling. One evening, Director Holloway addressed us again in the assembly hall. Her words were sharp, deliberate. "You were selected because you were weak. Society cast you aside. This program has given you what you lacked. Strength through transformation. You are no longer failures. You are reborn. Do not resist the future. Embrace it." Her speech ignited something volatile in the room. Some clapped, their eyes shining with a conviction that frightened me. Others clenched their jaws, refusing to acknowledge her. I sat frozen, torn in half. Part of me wanted to spit at her words, to rage against the loss of everything I once was. But another part of me, the part that had felt invisible, worthless, wondered if maybe she was right. Maybe this was my second chance. Later that night, Marcus approached me in the dormitory. His hair brushed his shoulders now. His face soft but hauntingly beautiful. His voice, higher yet still familiar, broke the silence between us. "Do you ever look in the mirror and think maybe this isn't all bad?" he asked, almost ashamed to say it. I wanted to deny it, to cling to the anger I thought I should feel. But instead I found myself whispering, "Sometimes." And in that single word I realized something terrifying. The government hadn't just been changing our bodies. They'd been changing our hearts, our minds, weaving threads of doubt and hope until we couldn't untangle them anymore. I wasn't just losing who I had been. I was beginning to accept who I might become. By the 4th month, there was no denying it anymore. We were no longer the men who had first walked through those steel doors. The mirrors didn't lie. The bodies reflected back at us were unmistakably feminine, soft curves replacing angles, gentle voices replacing the deeper ones we once carried. I woke one morning to find my hair brushing against my neck in waves, the strands finer, glossier than they'd ever been. My skin glowed with a softness that startled me, my jawline slender, my eyes bright in ways that no longer belonged to the old me. The facility provided brushes, creams, even subtle cosmetics, as though daring us to test out our new reflections. I resisted at first, but curiosity gnawed at me. One night, alone in my room, I picked up a small tube of lip color and pressed it gently against my mouth. When I looked up, my heart skipped a beat. The reflection that stared back could have been someone else entirely. A girl with cautious eyes, still uncertain but undeniably alive. The transformation had reached its peak, but our emotions lagged behind, tangled in resistance and reluctant acceptance. Some of us broke down entirely. I remember walking past the showers one evening and hearing muffled sobs, someone whispering over and over, "This isn't me. This isn't me." Their voice was high, melodic, but the anguish was raw. Others embraced it. A few of the girls, because that's what they were now, whether they admitted it or not, experimented with the cosmetics, even smiling at their reflections. It was unsettling, watching them slip so easily into roles that terrified me. Marcus was one of them. The same man who once carried himself like a wall of muscle now sat cross-legged on his bed, carefully brushing his hair until it shined. He caught me staring and gave a small, almost teasing smile. "You should try it," he said softly. "It helps." I wanted to snap at him, to remind him of who he used to be, but the words stuck in my throat. Instead, I turned back to my mirror that night, unable to stop staring at the stranger I had become. But the government wasn't content with just physical changes. They needed us to believe in the identities they'd crafted for us. One day, Director Holloway gathered us in the assembly hall, each of us seated nervously in rows. A massive screen flickered on behind her, displaying files, our files. "Today," she announced, "you receive your assignments. The past has been erased. From this point forward, you will know yourselves only by the names and roles we provide." The files scrolled one by one. New names, new identities. It felt like a guillotine cutting through the last tether to who I'd been. When my name appeared, I felt the breath leave my lungs. My old name was gone, replaced by a softer, distinctly feminine one. I repeated it silently in my head, tasting the unfamiliarity of it. My identity card was handed to me, and for the first time I saw my new photo. The girl staring back had my eyes but none of my hesitation. She looked confident, composed, almost proud. I couldn't look at it for long. My hands shook as I shoved the card into my pocket. That night, the tension in the dorm reached a breaking point. One of the others, Daniel, who had fought the hardest, tore his ID card in half and shouted at the guards that he would never accept this. The guards swarmed, dragging him out as he kicked and screamed. His cries echoed down the corridor until they faded into silence. No one spoke after that. We all knew what it meant. There was no escape. Days blurred together, filled with training sessions. We were taught new ways to move, to speak, to present ourselves. Voice lessons drilled us until our old tones were unrecognizable. Movement instructors corrected the way we walked, adjusting each step until it flowed with unfamiliar grace. Even our posture was reshaped. Hands no longer shoved in pockets but resting lightly at our sides. At first, I resisted, stumbling deliberately, forcing my voice lower. But every correction, every stern look from the instructors chipped away at me. Eventually, I found myself walking with that same fluid grace, my voice lilting naturally without effort. The frightening part was how quickly it became second nature. One evening, Marcus approached me again, holding out a small mirror. His expression was gentle, almost reassuring. "Look," he said quietly. "Stop fighting. This is you now. You don't have to hate it." I hesitated, but I took the mirror. When I saw my face framed by hair that now brushed my shoulders, my lips fuller, my eyes bright, something inside me cracked. For the first time, I didn't immediately think of what I'd lost. I thought of what I might gain. But acceptance came with guilt. At night, I'd whisper my old name into the darkness, terrified I'd forget it entirely. Yet each time I said it, it felt more like a ghost, slipping further away, until it no longer fit in my mouth. The program had won. But what haunted me most wasn't the changes or the rules. It was the quiet realization that I wasn't sure I wanted to go back anymore. The day came when they told us we were ready to leave the facility. Not free, never free, but ready to be released into the world with our new identities. The announcement came during morning assembly, Director Holloway standing as tall and unyielding as ever. "You have been reshaped. The weakness you carried before is gone. You are now assets to society, stronger because you have embraced change. Today you will begin your integration." Integration. The word sounded sterile, clinical. But what it really meant was simple. We were expected to step into the lives they had created for us, to play roles that weren't ours, to prove that we had been completely rewritten. We were given civilian clothes, skirts, blouses, dresses, fitted coats, and makeup kits along with them. I remember holding the bundle in my hands, my chest tightening. These weren't costumes anymore. They were expectations, requirements. The first time I put on the clothes, I froze in front of the mirror. The fabric clung to my new frame as if it had been waiting for me. The blouse softened my shoulders. The skirt traced the new shape of my hips. When I slipped into the shoes, low heels designed for practice, my steps felt unstable, clumsy. But after a few tries, my body adjusted, almost naturally. That frightened me most of all. The others looked just as uneasy. Some tugged at their skirts, frowning at how natural they fit. Others avoided mirrors entirely, refusing to acknowledge what they'd become. Marcus was different. He stood in the corner, smoothing down his dress, his reflection glowing with something I hadn't seen in months: peace. That evening, we were taken into the city for the first time since our capture. The bus windows were tinted, but I could still see the world rushing past. Streets filled with people, neon lights flashing, lives carrying on as if nothing extraordinary was happening in the facility just a few miles away. When we stopped, the guards escorted us into a training center disguised as a community building. Inside, we were divided into groups and given tasks: shopping for ourselves, ordering food, even making small talk with strangers planted by the program. Every moment was monitored, every interaction judged. I stumbled through it all, my voice trembling as I ordered coffee, my hands shaking as I handled the money. The barista smiled politely, treating me as though I was just another young woman. For a moment my heart nearly stopped. Was that really what I looked like to them? Just another girl in line. When I returned to the table, Marcus leaned close and whispered, "See? They didn't even question it. You're her now. You're who they see." I wanted to argue, but I couldn't. 'Cause he was right. Back at the dorm that night, I stared at myself in the mirror for hours. I tried on the different clothes they had given us, each outfit painting a different picture of the girl I'd become. Some part of me felt sick, guilty, like I was betraying the memory of who I had been. But another part, quieter but undeniable, felt a rush of something close to freedom. Still, cracks began to show. Not everyone could handle the integration. One girl, once Michael, broke down after a stranger in the city complimented her dress. She collapsed into sobs, insisting she wasn't who they thought she was. The guards pulled her away, her cries echoing long into the night. I started having dreams of my old life. Sitting in my parents' living room, my mother calling me by my old name, my father asking me what I wanted to do with my future. But even in those dreams, my reflection was different. I'd catch sight of myself in a window or a mirror, and it was always her staring back, not me. One evening, Director Holloway summoned me privately. Her office was sharp, sterile, the walls lined with files. She slid a folder across the desk, her eyes piercing mine. "You're progressing," she said evenly. "Better than most. But you're still clinging to the past. That will end. You need to decide here and now, if you're going to keep resisting or if you'll accept who you've become. If you resist, you'll break. And broken assets have no place in this program." Her words hit like a blade. I wanted to tell her she was wrong, that I'd never give in. But instead, all I could manage was a trembling. "I don't know who I am anymore." For the first time, I thought I saw something flicker in her eyes. Not pity but calculation. She leaned forward. "Then let me be clear. You are no longer him. That person is gone. You are her now. You will live as her. And one day soon you will thank us for it." She dismissed me after that, but her words clung to me like chains. I stumbled back to my dorm, clutching the ID card with my new name. I whispered it out loud again and again, testing it on my tongue. Each time it felt a little less foreign, a little more like mine. That night, for the first time, I didn't whisper my old name before falling asleep. And when I dreamed, it wasn't of the boy I had been. It was of the girl in the mirror, walking confidently into a world that finally saw her. The final stage was called completion. They never explained what it meant, only that once you passed through it there was no going back. We were gathered one last time in the assembly hall, each of us sitting straighter now, our frames unrecognizable from the ones that had slouched in these same chairs months ago. The silence was thick, but it wasn't the same silence as before. This was heavier, charged with the weight of what we all knew. This was the end of our old lives. Director Holloway stood at the podium, her presence unshakable. "You were chosen because you were weak. You are leaving as something else. Today you step fully into the identities we have given you. There is no returning to who you were. There is only forward." She motioned, and the guards led us one by one into separate chambers. When my turn came, I felt my chest tighten. My legs moved anyway. The chamber was small, sterile, with a single chair facing a mirror. On the desk beside it lay a neatly folded outfit and a folder with my new name embossed on the cover. I sat staring at my reflection. The girl in the mirror looked back with cautious eyes, her hair brushing her shoulders, her lips faintly parted. She looked fragile but not broken. She looked ready. The outfit waiting for me was elegant yet simple. A fitted blouse, a flowing skirt, and a pair of shoes that gleamed beneath the harsh lights. My hands trembled as I picked them up. Each piece felt heavier than it should, as though it carried the weight of a choice I hadn't realized I'd already made. I put them on slowly, almost ritualistically. The blouse hugged my form perfectly, the skirt falling against the shape of hips that hadn't existed months ago. When I finally stepped into the shoes, I rose unsteadily at first, then steadier until standing felt natural. Too natural. The mirror didn't show a prisoner anymore. It showed a woman. A woman who had once been someone else, yes, but who now existed fully in this body, in this face, in this identity. I reached for the folder. Inside was everything about my new life. Documents, IDs, even fabricated histories that painted me as if I had always been her. As if the boy who once existed had been erased from every record. At the bottom of the folder was a single sheet of paper. It read, "Sign below to acknowledge the death of your former self and the acceptance of your new identity." My hand hovered over the pen. My chest ached. Memories flashed in my mind. My parents, my childhood room, my old friends. Faces, voices, laughter that felt like they belonged to someone else now. I wanted to scream that I wasn't ready, that this wasn't fair, that I hadn't chosen this. But then I looked back at the mirror. The girl staring at me didn't look like a victim. She looked like she'd been waiting her whole life to exist. For a long time I sat in silence, torn between two lives, one slipping away like smoke, the other rising like a sunrise I couldn't ignore. Finally, with trembling fingers, I signed the paper. The door opened and guards escorted me outside. The facility gates loomed high behind me, but beyond them stretched the city, bright, alive, indifferent to what I had endured. The world didn't see the boy I used to be. It only saw her. Marcus stood nearby, his hair gleaming in the streetlight. His expression calm, almost serene. He caught my eye and gave me the same small, knowing smile he always had. "Ready?" he asked softly. I wanted to say no. I wanted to say I wasn't sure. But instead I nodded. Because in that moment, I realized that maybe I was ready. Not for the life I had lost, but for the one ahead of me. As we walked into the city, the weight of my old name, my old self, fell away. I whispered my new name under my breath, the sound fragile but certain. And for the first time, it didn't feel like someone else's name. Felt like mine. The program had changed me, reshaped me, broken me apart and rebuilt me into someone new. And though fear still gnawed at the edges of my heart, there was something else too. Oh. The girl in the mirror was no longer a stranger. She was me. And I walked forward step by step into a future that no one, not even the government, could fully control.